Thank you, everybody, for being with us. Thank you, Kayla, for setting us up here. And welcome, everybody, to this event that we've been really looking forward to now for a while. Bittersweet, but an opportunity to remember and to celebrate the legacy of a teacher and a friend and a colleague of so many of us here at Drisha. When I say that Rabbi Moshe Kahn was and is a beloved figure at Drisha, I know beloved is kind of a cliche and it's often thrown around now, but in his case, I can tell you, I can attest personally, as can everyone else on this call, truly, truly beloved, loved by us all. And we all felt his love. When I say that he was revered, I can tell you with my own eyes, I saw how his students revered him and cherished the opportunity to learn from him. So I'm John Kelson. I'm the Chief Education Officer at Drisha. I'm actually not going to be speaking tonight, but I just wanted to welcome you all, and I'm not going to belabor the introductions in memory of this event in honor of and the legacy of Rav Moshe Yosef ben Chaim Michal HaKohen and Chavi. Is it Michla? Is this your grandmother's? And Michla, okay. So Rav Moshe Yosef ben Chaim Michal HaKohen Michla. This event should be an Aliyat Neshama for him, and Zecher Sadiq Livracha, I can say with a full heart. So we'll begin with some words from Rav Kahn's daughter, Dr. Chavi Kahn. Thank you so much for being with us and helping us put this event today together in honor of your father's yahrzeit. I should note, by the way, before I forget, that the yahrzeit actually was earlier this month, Chaf Shvat, coming up Chaf Shvat, but on the Gregorian calendar, January 6th. So we're right around the time, but we'll begin with words by Dr. Chavi Kahn, and then turn to a Shiur by Rav Kahn's beloved student, Dr. Shana, my colleague here at Drisha, Dr. Shana Strauch Schick. What better tribute could there be for the legacy of Rav Moshe Kahn than a Shiur? And then finally, we'll close out with some words by Rabbi David Silber, who is speaking here not only his capacity as founder and dean of Drisha, but also as a decades-long friend and indeed chavruta of Rav Kahn. So we'll close with that event. So thank you all for being with us. And without further ado, Dr. Kahn, we turn it over to you.
Thank you all so much for being here. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you all really also just for all your support this last year. Rabbi Silber, Rabbi Kelson, Dr. Strauch Schick. And really it's meant so much to myself and my family. In a way, the pain of my father's loss feels actually a little more acute a year in than immediately after. But thank you all for being willing to be here and listening. I'll be brief. In this week's Parshas Yisro, Moshe sits for the first time to judge Bnei Yisrael in accordance with the Torah laws. And the pasuk says, "Vayihi mimacharas vayeshev Moshe lishpot es ha'am." And Rashi says that mimacharas, the next day, refers to the day after Yom Kippur. When Moshe returned with the second luchos, the next day he sat to judge the people. And Rav Soloveitchik explains that whenever the Torah uses the word mimacharas, it means it's trying to tell us that there is something to learn from the juxtaposition of these two events. And in this case, the Torah is telling us that every mishpat should be associated with the spirit of Yom Kippur and the spirit of forgiveness, of reconciliation, and of love. And the role of the Rabbi is not just to paskin based on the strict facts of the case but is to truly see the whole person before you, where they come from, their struggles, their values, and to attempt to bring healing. And I believe that this was my father's halachic worldview. My father believed that halakha had to be compassionate, and compassion infiltrated his halachic views, especially regarding issues that impacted women, whether the way he identified with the plight of agunot, or the way he recognized the extent that women's reproductive lives impacted their physical and mental health. Krista Tippett, the author and podcast host of On Being, says that the measure of a wise life is the imprint they've made on the life around them. And when I look at my dad's life's work and the ripples that it created, I think that it was really this spirit of compassion that was so key to his success. Because in his humble and unassuming way, he really made all of us seen and accepted for who we are, and that was always enough. And so, my hope for all of us, especially in this day and age, is that we can all be zocha to live our lives with that spirit of compassion and the spirit of mimacharas. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you so much. Okay, with that, we'll turn it over to Dr. Strauch Schick for a shiur in honor of and the legacy of Rav Moshe Kahn. So, Shana, please.
And notes for this will be posted in chat momentarily.
Yes, there's a source sheet. So Kayla, would you be able to share that in the chat? Hey, thank you so much for those beautiful words. And it's such a great privilege and a daunting task to be giving a shiur in memory of Morenu Rabbeinu, Rav Moshe Kahn Z. And I hope to do a measure of justice to his memory as a tremendous Talmud Chacham, and his legacy as such a wonderful teacher of Torah to scores of women across the world who continue to learn and teach the Torah they received from him. The moment we discussed giving a shiur in honor of Rabbi Kahn's first yard site, one sugya came to me immediately. It's the one that's in the middle of the second parak of Masechet Makos. It's the first source you have there. And Daf Yod Amud Aleph, kind of strange brisa that says the following: Tana, Talmid Shagala, Megalin Rabo Imo. A student who is exiled takes his Rebbe with him. Now, this exile does not refer to the diaspora outside of Israel. Rather, it refers to the Chiyuv D'Oraisa, the biblical obligation for one who accidentally kills someone else to flee to an Ir Miklat, the city of refuge, one who had no malicious intent. He spared capital punishment by being exiled to a city of refuge so that the Goel Hadam, the family members of the victim, are not able to avenge the victim's death and kill this unwitting perpetrator, which apparently they had the right to do. So Masechet Makos, it's, a halachic Gemara, and it goes into the details of delineating what constitutes an accidental murder, when is it considered malicious, who gets exiled, who does not get exiled, where do you construct these cities. And in the middle of this very technical legal talk about pretty gruesome topic, this ironically touching brisa appears. If a student is exiled, meaning he's guilty of having committed an accidental murder, he's therefore forced to leave his home and reside in a city of refuge, and he has to take his Rebbe with him. Shana Amar, for the Torah says in Devarim Daled Membet, says there, that one who accidentally kills his fellow, and he did it unwittingly, and he didn't hate this person. He runs to one of these cities so that he may live. The chai. So the Drisha here is avidli memida dehave lechiyusa. He should do something so that he will have life or a livelihood. So that's why when the accidental killer, is guilty of this, he runs to the city of refuge and he takes his Rebbe with him. Amar Rebbe Zera, so Rebbe Zera says, Mikan shelo yishin adam letalmid she'enu hagun. From here, one should learn that you should not teach a student who is not worthy, who's not good. Rashi explains, because you don't want to have a student who's going to cause you to go to an miklat. So this is a very strange Gemara. How do we understand this obligation? While the Gemara does somewhat answer it because it says Torah is life, but the question is, why should the Rebbe have to be punished? Why does the Rebbe have to go to the Ne'ir Miklat? Can't the person learn Torah in some other way? And this question is strengthened by the next line of the Sugya, a statement by Rabbi Yochanan. Says Rabbi Yochanan, Harav Shegala Megalin Yeshiva Soimo. If a Rebbe, if a teacher has to run to a city of refuge, then he has to bring his yeshiva with him. It seems to be if a Rebbe were to be in a Horeg Bishogeg, he accidentally kills someone, he therefore has to go to the Ir Miklat, the city of refuge, then he would bring his yeshiva with him. So that means that there might already be a yeshiva in the Ir Miklat, in the city of a refuge. So what then would happen if there was a yeshiva there? Would the Rebbe still have to be exiled with his student? Would he go along too? If the point is to learn a Torah, then the exiled person can just go to the yeshiva that already exists there, and he wouldn't have to take his Rebbe with him. So how do we understand this very strange halacha? On the one hand, it can be viewed in a somewhat negative light. Perhaps the teacher in some ways bears responsibility for the actions of his student, even those ones that are unattended. And they should have taught them better and led their students in the right path. And that's why the Rebbe gets exiled too. That's one way to understand it. The Ritva, however, understands this in a different and rather a positive light. So please turn to source number 2. On these words, Megalim Rabbi Rabo Imo, Ritva explains Perish, even if there already is a yeshiva in the Ir Miklat, the Rebbe still has to be exiled with his student. And why is that? Says the Ritva, Shalo min hakol adam zochel le'omod. Because you can't just learn with everybody. Okay, you can't learn with everyone. We're not able to learn with every person. There's a special connection that exists to students and teachers. It just doesn't exist with just anyone. So the Ritva, what he really essentially does is connect the two statements in the Gemara. The one that one must bring the Rebbe with them to the Ir Miklat, and that which states that when a Rebbe goes to the Ir Miklat, he must bring his yeshiva with him. So that indicates that there may very well be yeshivot in the Ir Miklat, and therefore a place from which the person can learn a Torah. Nevertheless, they still have to bring their Rebbe with them. And why? What's the logic? Because a person isn't able to learn with everyone. And so you have to bring the person with whom you are already to learn from with you to the Ir Miklat. Now, how does the Ritva know this? So the Ritva didn't make this up. He quotes a Gemara Kid'amrinam b'Maseches Avodah Zarah. And being a student of Rav Kahn, we have to look up this Gemara. So we're now going to turn to source number 3. So this is a very different Gemara. It's about a machlokas between Rish Lakish and Rav Yochanan concerning the prohibition to derive a benefit from avodah zarah, from idolatry. And their machloket is the prohibition only against deriving a benefit from idolatry, Or is it also against providing a benefit from idolatry? So in order to answer this question, a brisa is quoted, which first discusses whether a Jew may purchase item from idol worshippers and educate in their courts, and it's allowed. And the reason is, this is towards the beginning, the middle of the brisa, the pneishu kematzo miadam, because it's as if he saves it from their hands, meaning allowing a Jew to go to non-Jewish courts, he'll be able to reclaim his property. The brisa continues, and this is a part that's relevant for us, very apropos, because it deals with a kohen. Im haya kohen. So if the person is a kohen, a priest, mitame b'chutz la'aretz, ladun ule'arer imahem, he is able to become pure by leaving Eretz Israel to go to outside of Eretz Israel, to go to Chutz La'aretz, in order to go to their courts and to challenge, to protest their judgments. Moreover, just like the Kohen is allowed to become impure by going outside of Israel, he's also even able to go into a cemetery. Now, the Gemara takes a pause here and says that's kind of strange. How can a Kohen violate an Isser de'oraisa? So says the Gemara, no, it's not Tuma de'oraisa. It's a Beit HaPras, which Rashi explains. It's a place that had been a cemetery and then had been plowed over. So there may or may not be dead bodies there. So therefore, it's only a Tuma and a purity on a rabbinic and not a Doraita level. Back to the brisa, umitame lomo Torah. The Kohen can also become tame, become pure, in order to enable him to learn a Torah, ulisa isha, and to get married as well. If the only way he's going to be able to learn a Torah or to get married is to become pure, the brisa says that's permitted. There's now a machlokes Tanaim about this issue. And how far do we extend this allowance for the Kohen to become impure? Amar Rabbi Yehuda, says Rabbi Yehuda, emasai. When can the Kohen become impure? Bisman she'emot se lomod. From when he can't find anyone or any place to learn from. But if there is a person or a place from whom he can learn, then he's not allowed to become a tame. This dispensation would not apply. That's the view of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yosei Omer, but Rabbi Yosei disagrees. Even if there is a person or a place from where he can learn, the Kohen is allowed to be metame himself. He's allowed to become pure. Why is that? Says Rabbi Yossi, Lefi she'ein adam zochel lamod mikol. This is a line that the Ritva quotes, because you're not able to learn with everyone. Again, not all teachers are the same. Different students connect with different people. And so if there is a teacher that you learn well from, even if you are a Kohen, even if that means you would have to become a tameh, pure, that would be permitted. And Rabbi Yossi says this was not just theoretical, he brings a proof that this actually happened. So there was an incident of a Yosef, a Kohen, who left Eretz Israel to learn with his Rebbe in Sidon, and says Rabbi Yochanan, Halakha Rabbi Yossi. So Rabbi Yochanan confirms that this indeed is the Halakha. So, further Ritva, let me open my, share my screen here. Screen. Smaller. Because, that's so big. Because you can't learn, okay, sorry. Make this a little smaller. A Kohen can become impure, to learn Torah from his teacher. Why? Because you can't learn from everyone. And because you can't learn from everyone, that's also why a student can take their Rebbe or must take their Rebbe when they're exiled to an Ir Miklat. So, and able to continue learning with the person with whom one is able to learn from. That is why one's Rebbe is exiled with him. So we answered our first question. However, two other questions now arise from this Gemara. First, what is the basis of this allowance? Meaning, since when can you violate a prohibition to perform a positive commandment? It's true, like we say there are certain things one can violate, but that's the concept of shev al ta'aseh. You can refrain and not do. So meaning you can refrain from doing a positive mitzvah, positive commandment, so that you will not come to violate a negative commandment. So we don't blow the shofar when Rosh Hashanah falls out on a Shabbos. You refrain from doing that action so that you will not come to actively violate a prohibition of carrying in Rishas Harabim. But we don't say you can actively violate a lo ta'aseh, a negative prohibition, in order to help you perform a positive action, a mitzvah ta'aseh. In order to answer this question, we also have to ask another question, which is, does this dispensation given to the Kohen to be metame himself, to become impure, does that apply to all mitzvos, or does it only apply to the two that are mentioned in this Gemara, which is learning Torah and Lisa Isha, getting married? So in order to answer this question, we're going to turn to source number 4 here, the Tosfos on this daf, who deals with this very question and tells us that it's indeed a machlokes. So go to the end of the second line. Says Tosfos, v'dafka v'hanach mitzvos. This dispensation given to the Kohen to become a tameh only applies to these two specific mitzvot of learning a Torah and getting married. Why is that? Shehein chashuvos, because these mitzvot are particularly important. Why? Lomod Torah, shegadol Talmud Torah shemevi lidei ma'aseh. What's so great about learning a Torah? Learning Torah is what's going to lead you to do everything else. It's what leads you to be able to act and live a life of Torah and a life of avodat Hashem, of service of God. V'isha nami, and getting married also. What does that do? Dichtiv, as it's written, meaning that fulfills a pasuk in Yeshayahu, Parak Memhei, pasuk Yudchet, where Yeshaya says, "Lo tohu v'ra'ah." The world was not created for emptiness, for nothingness, rather lashevet yitzara. The world was created to inhabit it, to fill it with a people. So these two mitzvos, learning Torah and getting married, are unique in that they enable for basically world building. Both are the first necessary steps in the larger purposes of both Jewish life and humanity. Aval l'shar mitzvos lo, and therefore Tosfos says, but this dispensation would not apply to any other mitzvot. It's unique. A Kohen is only able to become a tameh if it's going to enable him to learn a Torah or enable him to get married. And Tosfos tells us that once again, they don't just make this up, rather, hachi mashma perak daled de Megillah. This is the implication of Gemara Megillah, which we are going to get to soon. But Tosfos first tells us that this is not the only opinion there is. And while Tosfos thinks that this only applies to these two mitzvot, the earlier opinion of the Geonim, which is found in the She'iltos, had a very different view. According to the She'iltos, these two mitzvot are actually not at all exceptional. Rather, they're paradigmatic. And continuing in the Tosfos, Aval She'iltos, Rav Acha Mefurash Hanach Kile. These mitzvot, explains Rav Acha and the She'iltos, these are actually the most lenient of all the mitzvot. And therefore, if a Kohen can become tameh for these two mitzvot, kol shekein l'shar mitzvot, all the more so a Kohen can become impure for other mitzvot, shehem chashuvot, that actually are important. So because these mitzvot are less strict, the Gemara is telling us if a Kohen is permitted to become impure for these, of course they'd be able to become tameh for other mitzvot. And it's possible, what's the Havara? How do we explain why these are less strict in other mitzvot. So I mean, you can already just say right away, not everyone is able to fulfill these mitzvot. Getting married, meaning having children, is certainly not in people's power. And not everyone is able to have children or spend a life learning Torah. So, they're mitzvot, but they're not one that people actually are able to perform. And, there's a view, Schick, actually, that one's able to fulfill their chiyuv of Talmud Torah just by saying Shema. So that might be the svara for why these are paradigmatic, and all the more so other mitzvot one would be allowed to violate for. Now, it seems that the Rif and the Rambam agreed with this view. If you look in sources 5 and 6, so they bring this down, just looking in the Rif in 5, Asor le'lekohen le'me'al le'veit hakvarot to kever metame kamet. So a Kohen, a priest, is not allowed to go to a cemetery because a grave makes him impure, just like contact with an actual dead body. Skipping down. But if he goes for a mitzvah, for example, he's getting married to marry a woman or to learn a Torah, and there's no other way he can go, shari, it is okay. So the fact that the Rif and the Rambam also uses the word kigon, means that these are brought as examples of mitzvot that a tameh can be mitame for, only on a derabanan level, they both say, which indicates that these are not exceptional, but these are just two examples, and that the same would apply to other mitzvot as well. And that's that's made in Divrei Chamudot that you have. So we have two opinions here. This is my next slide. Yeah. For which mitzvot can a Kohen become tameh, midirabanan, or incur a rabbinic level of impurity? For the Geonim, Rif, and the Rambam, all mitzvot. For a Tosfos, Talmud Torah, and procreation. So the question is, why does a Tosfos differ from their predecessors and their Sephardi contemporaries? So it's because of the Gemara that is brought therein, and that is our next source, number 7. This is Gemara in Megillah, on the first mission, the third Perek, which discusses the Isser of selling a Sefer Torah. You're not allowed to sell a Sefer Torah, and whether one may violate this Isser, or whether it is indeed a violation, if you were to sell an old Sefer Torah in order to buy a new one, would that constitute an Isser of selling a Sefer Torah or not? So in order to, so that's the question here in the first line of the Gemara. Sefer Torah yashan likach bo chadash. What is the law regarding selling an old Sefer Torah in order to buy a new one? So skipping down to towards the bottom, Tashma, come in here. Damar Rabbi Yochanan Bishum Rabbi Meir. For Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Meir, Ein mochrim Sefer Torah ella lo motorav lisa isha. You're only allowed to sell a Sefer Torah in order, you guessed it, to learn Torah and to get married. So at first, the Gemara wants to infer from here, learning a Torah is the same as buying a Sefer Torah. So it wants to infer, so if you can sell it to learn Torah, you can also sell it to buy a physical Sefer Torah as well. The Gemara rejects that and says, no, you can't make that inference. Why? Dilma Shani Talmud, because maybe learning is different. Meaning you can't infer from a statement that you can sell a Torah to learn Torah, that you can also sell a Torah to buy one, because learning Torah is not the same thing as a physical Sefer Torah. Why? Talmud mevi lidei ma'aseh, because learning Torah is what leads to action. A Sefer Torah on its own doesn't lead to anything, but it's the learning of the Torah that enables you to do the mitzvot and live a life of Torah and ishanami, and getting married as well. Why is one only permitted to sell a Sefer Torah for that? Because lo tov b'ra'ah lashevet yitzara, the pasuk from Yeshayahu. Getting married is having children, populating the world is why the world was created according to Yeshayahu. Hence, Tosfos derives that these two mitzvot are special. And just as one may only violate these two prohibitions, just like one can violate the Isser, the prohibition of selling a Sefer Torah, in order to perform these two mitzvot, i.e. of learning a Torah and getting married, so too, a Kohen can only become pure for these two special mitzvot as well, of learning Torah and getting married. And again, these mitzvot are unique because they are the prerequisite necessary steps from which everything else follows. Torah leads to a life of performing mitzvot, and getting married leads to populating the world. So we have this machloket rishonim. When do we allow a Kohen to commit the isser of becoming impure midrabanan? According to the Gaonim, Rif, and the Rambam, it's all mitzvot. For Tosfos, it's only for these two special mitzvot of Talmud Torah and getting married. So I'll stop my share for a moment. So Tosfos, we saw, has a good proof. The Gemara in Megillah, meaning just like one can only violate the Isser of selling a Sefer Torah for these two mitzvot, so too that's what a Kohen can violate, becoming a Tameh for. What support does the Shiltot, Rif, and the Rambam have? So the truth is they too have a compelling supporting text. And that's the Abraisa back in the Gemara in Avodah Zarah. Recall that it did not only allow a Kohen to become pure to learn Torah and get married. It also permitted a Kohen to become pure in order to litigate in a non-Jewish court. As the Abraisa says, just going back to, share my slide again, going back to the earlier Avodah Zarah source. Im haya Kohen mitameh b'chutz la'aretz. Im haya Kohen mitameh b'chutz la'aretz ladun ule'arer imahem. Okay, so if he's a Kohen, he is allowed to become pure to litigate in their courts, and he can also he can go to a cemetery as well. And then the second part of the Braita said, "Umetameh lo mo Torah ulisa isha." So that is the proof for the Rambam and the Rif. How will a Tosfos respond to this? So the Karban, it's the same author as a Karban Haida on the Yerushalmi. He has a second parish on the Yerushalmi, the Shari Karban. So Masechet Nazir and the Yerushalmi, he actually has a way to resolve a Tosfos. Meaning, how will a Tosfos explain why is a Kohen allowed to become a Tameh to go to a court, if according to Tosfos, learning Torah and getting married are uniquely special? So the Shari Karban picks up on the fact that the Braisa is divided up into these two sections. It says, Imaya Kohen mitameh ladun ule'arer. If he's a Kohen, he can become pure to go to courts. Then the second part says, u'mitameh lo mo Torah v'lisa'isha, and he can become pure to learn Torah and get married. Why did it have to say this word mitameh 2 times? Why couldn't it just say he can become pure to go to the courts, u'lo mo Torah v'lisa'isha? So says the Sharei Karban, the fact that the Braisa divides these two clauses up shows that they refer to two different kinds of tuma, purity. The part of the Braisa which allows a Kohen to become impure to go to court, that refers to tuma on a derabanan level, what the Braisa was talking about according to the Gemara. He's allowed to become pure, but only on a rabbinic level to go to a non-Jewish court. What tuma does the second clause refer to? To learn Torah and to get married. That applies to even tuma on a deoraisa level. A Kohen is even allowed to go into an actual cemetery, and not just a possible cemetery, in order to learn Torah and get married. Why? Tosfos says, because these are mitzvot chashuvot. These are such a special mitzvot that one can even violate a deoraisa. So now our machlokes has gotten a little bit more fine-tuned. According to the Gaon and Rif and Rambam, one can violate Tuma Dirabanan to perform all mitzvot, whereas for a Tosfos, one can violate Tuma Dirabanan for all mitzvot, or at least for going to the courts, let's say, but can even violate Tuma Deoraita, sorry for the typo, for mitzvot chashuvos of learning Torah, Talmud Torah, and procreation. Okay, so now we have another question on Tosfos, and that is, are these really the only two mitzvot chashuvot? Are these really the only two mitzvot to have a special status that one could violate? And Tosfos and Baba Basra actually observes that they are not the only mitzvot chashuvot. There's actually another mitzvah, which is of the utmost importance, which Litzarenu Hagadol is very relevant at this moment right now, because it's a mitzvah of Pidyon Shibuim, redeeming captives. As it says in the Gemara Baba Basra. And because it's just so relevant right now, I'd just like to read this Gemara inside to see how Chazal regarded this issue of captivity. Now we're turning to source number 9. So the Gemara begins with a betor, a dispensation for Yisomim, for orphans, from having to give charity, meaning they do not have to give tzedakah, even for Pidyon Shevuyim, even for the purpose of redeeming captives. And says the Gemara, that is a chiddush. That's an innovation, because Pidyon Shevuyim, redeeming captives, is regarding a mitzvah rabbah, a great mitzvah. And so based on that, in friends, the Gemara reports the following question. Amar le Rava la Rabba bar Mary. So Rava asked Rabbi Bar Mary, Minahan milta amor banan de pidyon shvuyim mitzvah rabbahi. How did the rabbis know that a pidyon shvuyim, that redeeming captives, is such a great mitzvah? Okay, I got to go back to my slide here. So it brings a pasuk from Yirmiyahu, which we can do on my PowerPoint. It's in Yirmiyahu Tetvav Bet. It says, Kol Mar Hashem. So says God, Asher lamavet, Asher lecherev, Asher lerav, Asher leshvi, Lashevi. Those are destined for the plague, or a natural death. Those are destined for the sword will go to the sword. Those destined for famine will go to famine. Those destined for captivity will go to captivity. And says Rabbi Yochanan here, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kol meuchar b'pasuk zeh kashem mechavera. Whatever comes later in this verse means it's worse. I mean, this verse goes in order of sending horror. So it begins with mavet. So mavet is not as bad, natural death is not as bad as death by the sword. Why? So it says, you can know this both from a svara, logical inference, as well as from a biblical verse. So the case of mavet lokam minuval, the body doesn't get mutilated as opposed to the sword it does, and it brings a pasuk from Tehillim. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his pious ones. And cherev is not as bad as ra'av. So famine is worse than the sword. Why? Because famine mitzdair, the person suffers, whereas with acherev lo kamitzdair, they don't suffer. It's a fast, painless death. But says the Gemara, shevi kashem mikulan, the captivity is worse than all of them. T'chulu isnehu be, because that contains the badness of all of them together, all the bad elements of all the other kinds of death are contained in captivity. So we see the terrible suffering caused by captivity, and therefore why it's regarded such a great mitzvah, such a great obligation to redeem captives, and it's regarded with the utmost importance. So as Tosfos, why then does the Gemara in Megillah not mention this Gemara, this mitzvah? Why can't one sell a Sefer Torah to do Pidyon Shivuyim? So Tosfos answers, actually, you know what? The Gemara didn't even have to say it. because, says Tosfos, Shema milta de peshitahi. It is so obvious. Of course, you can sell a Sefer Torah in order to redeem captives, and therefore, lo it's terich lemesne. That's why the Brisa didn't even have to tell us that. It's a brainer. You do everything you can to redeem captives. Whereas Talmud Torah and Pru'uruvu, that's not as obvious, and that's why the Brisa had to go out of its way and tell us that a Kohen can become pure in order to fulfill these mitzvot. Another answer offered by Yad David for what makes Pidyon Shvuim special. So it's actually more is allowed for the purpose of redeeming a captive, because Talmud Torah and Pru'uruvu, one can only sell a Sefer Torah in order to help themselves get married, or in order so they themselves can learn Torah. Whereas Pidyon Shvuim, you can even do the violations of selling Sefer Torah in order to redeem another person. So that's why it wasn't included in the Gemara and Avodah Zarah, because it's more permissible. More is allowed when it comes to redeeming captives. And I just have to point out the Baal Me'or, one of Rabbi Kahn's favorite Rishonim, also mentions the mitzvah of, or the idea of kavod labriut. Human dignity is another mitzvah one could commit a violation for. It may just be a sheva al ta'aseh. But I just wanted to bring that up as well. So we've seen, according to Tosfos, the supreme importance of Talmud Torah, to pursue the study of Torah. A Kohen can be metame himself by either leaving Eretz Yisrael or even entering a space which incurs tuma deoraisa in order to learn Torah. One can also sell a Sefer Torah in order to enable you to learn Torah. And this is the reason that a Talmud takes their Rebbe when they are exiled to an Ir Miklat, so that they can study Torah from their Rebbe. And why is that? Why is Torah so exceptional? Because everything else flows from it. It's the prerequisite to being an Eved Hashem. It's the foundation to living a Jewish life. And why does one bring their Rebbe if there already is a yeshiva in the Ir Miklat from where they can learn Torah? Because Chazal recognize that there's a unique connection between a Talmud or a Talmidah and their Rebbe. And that allows you to learn a best from them, both in terms of the Torah that you learn, and also to emulate him, how he learns, how he teaches, how he behaves as a human being. This is evidence in just one more source I want to look at, a strange riff. Other than this topic, I really want to do a machlokes Baal Me'or and Milchamos Hashem in a Shiur commemorating Rav Kahn. The problem is, on this sugya, this is the only riff there is. There's no riff on this entire, not just sugya, the whole second perek of Hakos contains one line of the riff, and that is our Brisa. Tana Talmud Shagalam Megalim Rabbi Moshe Amar B'chai Avelim Nideda Tehavele Chayus Amar Zeh Mikan Shalishna Adam L'Tamich Enu Hagun Hazron Ala Elu Hein Hagolim. That is the entire comment of the riff on the second perek of Rakos, and there's no Baal Me'or and Milchamos Hashem on this riff. But why is that? Why is there no riff on this? And maybe the point is, just like Torah is the first step for everything else, if you have your Rav with you, everything else will follow too. You'll learn the details. You'll learn the Torah. You'll learn how to be an Eved Hashem. Having your Rebbe is the prerequisite to depth from which everything else flows. And Rabbi Kahn was our Rebbe in every sense. He devoted his life to ensuring that everyone had the ability to learn Torah and to be part of this fundamental act of being an Eved Hashem. And his loss has left us with profound feelings of loss and sadness, a feeling of being in exile. He's not here anymore. We can't physically take him with him, but we can continue to take what we learned from Rav Kahn and what he did for his meticulous care in us studying and understanding Torah, his love of truth, his profound humility that ramified in every aspect of his life, how he conducted himself, the great respect and compassion he showed all people, remembering and trying to emulate the person Rabbi Kahn was, and continuing to learn, study, and teach his Torah, are what we can take with us into our galus. Thank you all very much. Yehi Zichru Baruch.
Thank you so much, Dr. Strauch. Before turning it to Rabbi Silber, just to close out our time together, and then when we're done, if people would like to, even those who are attendees till now, would like to try to jump in as panelists to be present, you're most welcome. I just want to recognize also Mrs. Chavi Kahn, who is here as well, of course. And I haven't seen you in person in a long time, but we're obviously honored by your presence here as we think about your husband and learn some of his Torah. Rabbi Silber.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I have a few words to say about our teacher and friend, Rabbi Moshe Kahn. But just at the outset to say that when you give some kind of a eulogy, you really can never fully capture the person. There's so much more to be said. And I very much appreciate what has been said so far, both by Dr. Kahn and by Shana Schick. Really appreciate what they said. I think it rings very true. So I'll just have a few words to say about Rabbi Kahn. I hope it does him service. This event was called Zichru Torat Moshe, which is taken from the very end of Sefer Malachi. Remember the Torah of Moshe, very appropriate title. And actually, I wanted to begin by discussing a debate between two other Moshes, two of our titans. One is Moshe ben Maimonides, and the other is Moshe ben Nachmanides. The Rambam, of course, as we know, wrote, apart from the Mishnah Torah and his Guide for the Perplexed, he wrote a book called Sefer HaMitzvot. In this book, he enumerates, in his view, what are the 613 commandments. He prefaces it typically by his 14 principles of what makes something a commandment altogether. And that's one of the great works of the Maimonides. And on that work, there was a critique of the Ramban, Moshe ben Nachman, Battle of the Titans. And the Ramban says sometimes that what the Rambam counted as a mitzvah is not a mitzvah. And sometimes he says that he left a mitzvah out. And one of the mitzvot that the Ramban claims the Rambam omitted is the mitzvah to remember Torat Moshe, to remember what happened at Mount Sinai, that we all stood at Sinai. And the verse that the Ramban quotes would be actually a negative, an injunction, taken from the 4th chapter of Devarim, is Rak Hishama L'cha Shmon Nafshecha Ma'od, Pen Tishkachet HaDvarim Asher Ro Einecha. We are commanded not to forget what we saw and not to allow these things to leave us. Pen Yosur Milvavcha Kol Yemei Chayecha. And not just that, to teach them to our children, to our grandchildren, to pass on what we saw to the next generations. What did we see? What are we supposed to remember about that event? So the first thing the Torah says is Yom Asher Amaratu Lifnei Hashem Elokecha B'chorev, V'emor Hashem Elai Haki Li Et Ha'am Yashviyem Et Dvarai. We're told to gather together, and Asher Yumedunu Liyira Oti, that the people should have reverence for me, fear and reverence for me. So the first thing we remember about Matan Torah, the injunction, Hishamer L'cha, is to remember that event of Sinai, what it means to receive the Torah. What it means to receive the Torah is to stand in reverence. Rabbi Moshe Kahn had reverence. He had reverence for the Torah. He was a demanding teacher. He demanded that people get it right. And one of the reasons he demanded that was out of respect for the Torah. The other reason was out of respect for the students. But he had a certain reverence, and it reflected in how he taught his classes, and it reflected the way he himself approached Torah, the reverence that he had for the Torah. I remember seeing a couple of pictures of Rabbi Kahn, and the pictures are Rabbi Kahn sitting in the Beit Midrash at Drisha with the students. They're learning, and he's learning. He didn't see himself as apart from them in a sense, because after all, the day of receiving the Torah is called in the book of Devarim Yom HaKahal, the day of the congregation. We're all in this together. So reverence, respect, both for the other person and respect for the Torah, was one of the hallmarks of Rabbi Kahn. That's one piece of this mitzvah, not to forget this event of Sinai. And the other is what the Torah says, "V'hodatam levanecha v'livnei vanecha," to teach them to pass on the tradition. Rabbi Kahn saw himself as someone who was passing on the tradition. And for this reason, his approach to learning was, and what he hoped students get out of the class, was not just covering a certain amount of material, but rather to give students the tools to be lifetime learners. Because for Rabbi Kahn, learning was part of life. It was that which gives us a path in life. It's that which gives us the ability to figure out what the appropriate thing to do is, to understand the halachic process, which he was highly committed to. So those are the basics. And he was very concerned that students learn the basics. Much more important to him than the specific topic was giving people a chance to be lifetime learners. In general, it wasn't just to be lifetime learners, because from that, since your concern as a teacher is to assist the other in living a full Jewish life, that naturally connects to helping people, students and others who are struggling in life, who have challenges in life, to try to work out their problems as well. He always had that interest, and later in life, he actually took this on as part of his job. I have no doubt that he was influenced by his wife, Chavi Kahn, who has spent her life assisting people. And Moshe Kahn was certainly influenced, perhaps the main influence, by the work that Chavi does in helping people. That's how he saw his role as a teacher. And actually, there's something else in these verses which talk about the experience of being at Sinai. That's when Moshe talks about himself. Book of Devarim is Moshe's book. This is what Moshe is talking. And Moshe says about himself, Moshe Rabbeinu, "V'yotich tziva Hashem ba'et hahi, v'amed etchem chukim u'mishpatim, la'asotchem otam ba'aretz, asher atem ovrim shama u'rishta." The way Moshe Rabbeinu describes his role, he's a kind of shadchan, actually. His role is to connect people to God. He's the intermediary. He's the broker. His role is to bring God's word to the people. That's how he sees his role. And Moshe Rabbeinu, whom we try to emulate, has two main qualities. In my view, the two most important qualities for a teacher, and perhaps the most important qualities in general. One is Moshe Emet, the Torah Emet, a profound honesty. To speak the truth. That's one of Moshe Rabbeinu's main qualities. And the other was Aish Moshe Anav Ma'od, Mikol Ha'adam Asher Al Pnei Ha'adamah, a deep humility. In my view, those two things are completely connected. They're actually one. Because if one understands oneself, who one really is, we know what we can do, and we certainly know what we can't do. The closer one is to God, the more one realizes human limitation. And you stand before the infinite. Rabbi Moshe Kahn, those were his two main qualities. He was an honest person, honest in life and honest in learning. If you don't know something, you don't know it. You got to figure it out. And he saw himself as the Eved Hashem. He saw himself as God's servant. His job is to bring the Torah, which he respected, to those people who haven't had the opportunity to learn Torah and to learn Torah deeply. And to give those people, in this case, women, he taught also some beginners up in Yeshiva University, but in the uptown. But his primary work in life was Drisha, which he began in 1980. He first started Drisha. He initially taught Halakha, and then he taught Gemara for many, many years. And his work at Stern, I would say that he was completely devoted to his students at Drisha and to his students at Stern. He also loved Drisha, truly loved Drisha. But those qualities of integrity and humility, those were the hallmark of Rabbi Kahn. And when we think of Rabbi Kahn, I think a lot of us remember not so much the specifics of what he taught. We remember the person. We remember seeing him inside the Beit Midrash, learning with us on the day of Yom HaKahal. I wanted to add one more thought about Rabbi Kahn. As I said in the beginning, Tipa Min Hayam can't fully capture the person at all. A year ago, actually, on the day of Moshe's Patira, I was actually in an airplane flight to Israel. I got to Israel and was able to listen to the funeral on Zoom. I wanted to participate, and I only discovered afterwards that the family had asked me to participate, but I didn't know that at the time. And my first response, actually, when I heard about it, apart from sorrow, came to mind a practice that the Jewish people have, a mitzvah called Kiddush Levana. Once a month, when the moon is still bechidusha, first half of the month, the moon is still growing, as it were. We stand outside, we see the moon, and we make a blessing. Kiddush Levana. And it struck me that, why the moon? Why is there a Kiddush Levana? And the Talmud in Sanhedrin talks about this being a great mitzvah. You know, only once a month receiving the divine presence. Seeing Kiddush Levana as being makpil pnei hashchina. What is that about? What's so special about the moon? And the moon, of course, comes in phases. It appears, it disappears. In terms of what we see, of course, it's there, but in terms of what we experience. It means it's there when there's a lot of light, when there's virtually no light. It's always there for us. And the blessing that describes the moon talks about the moon is happy to do. It's happy to do the commander's will. She does her commander's will, the creator's will. Poel emet shepulato emet. This creator who created, who is truth, and his work is truth. Rav Moshe Kahn was a good friend. He was a teacher at Drisha for many years, dedicated teacher. He was also a dedicated employee. This is somebody who never missed his classes. I remember he was one day quite sick. He couldn't come in, covered his class. I want to make it up, he says. I said, you don't have to make a class up. You were sick. No, I have to make the class up. And it wasn't just because this punctilious need to do exactly the right thing in terms of Drisha. It was something else. He doesn't want his students to miss a class. It's this dedication to the students that was actually exceptional, really, exceptional. So he was a poel emet, shipulato emet. And that's what we respect. Difficult times, everybody has challenges in life, a lot of light, a little light, difficulty. This is someone who always shows up for his students, shows up for the Torah. And there's something else about the moon, which is the sun is the great light. The moon is there for us when it's relatively dark. Rabbi Moshe Kahn saw his role. I'd say grew into and saw his role as bringing light for those pieces of the community who weren't privileged, weren't able, for any number of reasons, to experience what Talmud Torah is. And he felt that at the time that we are living, the last many years, women are going to college, graduate school, you name it, that the Torah can be no less. The Torah has to be there for everybody. This is someone who brought the light of Torah to people who had not yet experienced what it means to stand in the presence of Torah's light. We ask God to enlighten our lives through the Torah. Here is somebody who dedicated his life to bring the light of Torah to the entire Jewish community. We all miss him very much, but the way he lived his life continues to teach us. It's a standard for all of us to live an honest life, full recognition of our abilities and our limitations, and a commitment to each other to be compassionate people. And when we have opportunities to help people move forward, to take advantage of those opportunities. Zichru Baruch, his memory is a blessing.
Okay, thank you all for being with us for this this recollection and celebration of Rav Moshe Kahn, of Rav Moshe Yosef ben Chaim Michal HaKohen Umichla. Withhis Zichru Baruch, may his memory be for a blessing. His memory is for a blessing in our Beit Midrash and beyond. Thank you to the family, and thank you all for being here. Yes, please, Mrs. Kahn.
I just wanted to thank you all. I think Rabbi Silber really depicted Maish as he was. And it was really very moving and very special. And Shana also was a very special student of Maish's. So it was just right that she would speak. We miss him. I think Rabbi Kahn would have been really shocked at the outpouring of love and respect that he received after his patira. Even before, when students were writing letters or coming to visit, I don't think he really got the essence or how deep his students felt. So all these accolades and people talking about Rabbi Kahn gave us a lot of chizuk as a family. And here it is a year later, and again, it's a tremendous amount of chizuk. Rabbi Silber was right. My husband loved Drisha. He was there from the very beginning, or maybe a year after you started, David, I don't know. And he loved to teach. Whoever wanted to learn, he was ready to teach. So I guess that's what I wanted to say. His relationship with Drisha was very strong and very deep. And he got a lot of nachas from all of his students. So thank you very much.
And if anyone has any comments who's in the attendee section, I'm going to send around one more round of invitations so that you can unmute yourself and speak.
I just wanted to say, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Rabbi Kahn came after the first year of Drisha, the second term. That's when he came. He was there in the 1980, the beginning in January of 1980. We started in September 79. So he was there from the beginning.
Thank you, Daniela.
Mhm. And thank you everyone who came here. Recording of this will be posted on Drisha's YouTube and YouTube channel within a few days. And Rabbi Kelson, can you lead us out?
Yes, as I said, thank you all for being with us. Actually, Chani, I'm going to share that I first met your husband because I don't know if you recall, but he would drive us in carpool sometimes to TABC.
Uh-huh.
And I always thought, here's this, he always looked so serious, and he was a man of serious purpose. And then only once I became a sort of junior colleague of his did I, that encounter his, directly his warmth. And as a young teacher, I don't know if you remember, I came to your house once on a Shabbos afternoon because I was teaching a sugya. I don't recall what it was, but I needed some help thinking it through, and he was terrific. He was so warm and just invited me in as a chavrusa, junior chavrusa in many senses, and yeah, we missed him very much.
Thank you so much.
And I saw how the students, I saw how the students, like I said before, loved and revered him fully. There was a time, actually, he might have injured his leg or so. I remember he couldn't come. He was in Teaneck. Yeah, that's right. He injured his leg and he was in Teaneck, and they would get on a bus. I remember they're leaving early. They would take a bus to Teaneck to go learn with him.
Yeah.
I remember that.
I think before Zoom, that was even before Zoom, he taught
Yeah.
via Zoom, or maybe it was Skype then.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I heard my husband speak in many places, but I was never a student of his. So I he was in the living room in front of the computer, and I sat in the corner listening. And that's when I understood what everybody was talking about. His connection, his interaction. He didn't just lecture. He really wanted to hear from everybody. So, yeah, that was special.
Okay. Thanks everybody who's writing into the chat. And thank you all for being here. Withhis Zichru Baruch. Have a wonderful rest of the day. And hope it's not out of turn to say I'm sure it's not out of turn. We're all praying for peace in Israel and beyond. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.